Hello, my name is Paula Hanford. I am the CEO of PSC Support. PSC stands for Primary Sclerosing Cholangitis, and we are the only UK charity solely focused on PSC. We fund groundbreaking research into the disease, we provide information and support, and we advocate for those people who have PSC as well. It's a really rare disease. Less than 10,000 people in this country have the disease, and it's a disease that affects the liver and the bile ducts. Currently, there's no cure, never mind effective treatments, which is why we are pushing the research agenda as much as we possibly can. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by T2, I got to read this because it's amazing, T2 trike rider, race runner and surfer Hannah Dines. Hannah is a decorated athlete, having achieved silver and bronze medals at the 2015 World Cup, 2 fourth place finishes at the UCI Road World Championships. She represented the Paralympics GB at the Rio 2016 Paralympic Games, finishing 4th and 5th in the trike events. She finished 4th at the World Parasurfing Championships and has represented England in 2021, 2022 and 2023. I think I need to catch my breath after that. It's absolutely amazing. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us today, Hannah.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me on.
I believe you're in Costa Rica. Tell us about that.
So I finished a clinical trial last year, and so that was brilliant, and it meant I had to be in the UK every month, and I can't do any more clinical trials for a while, and I had a resurgence of my symptoms, and I feel, and so I'm training in surfing, as we know, but I feel a release, or I can manage my symptoms more when I do surf a lot, especially in a beautiful tropical environment. And so I discussed with my doctors, and I said, there's no cause, there's no cure. Would this be a valid kind of reason to actually try and manage my ongoing symptoms? And they said yes. So I'm here training for England, but also trying to deal with what is a pretty serious disease. Making the best out of life, living really, really hard. That's what I like to say. Yeah.
Fantastic. You've spoken really, I wish I was in Costa Rica, by the way, at the moment, not in Liverpool, which is raining and drizzling.
Sorry, it's great here, not to rub it in.
Yeah, you are. So you've spoken really openly about your cerebral palsy and your journey as an athlete, and you're an ambassador for inclusivity and accessibility in sport. Before we get into the details around your PSC and your journey with PSC, can you tell me what life was like before you started experiencing PSC symptoms?
Yeah, so I was born with cerebral palsy, and that's just a really common disability in children, the most common disability in children. So it meant I was in hospital most of my young adult life, leading up to 18 years of age, with lots of surgeries. But I had a pretty standard life. I went to mainstream school, I got into university, and I didn't find sport. I didn't move my body. I was all about just staying still and using my brain, really. So I was kind of, I wanted to be a doctor, but I got into biomedical sciences instead. And so, yeah, I was pretty over the top back then, even before sport. But it was in university I found sport, that I was president of life sciences. I did a million things, and then I found sport, and I started to really direct my energy towards sport. And that was both 2 sports at once, a sport called frame running, which is an assisted running kind of sport, and then trike racing, which was a Paralympic sport. So my life was, just really raring to go, so excited to be out of hospital. My legs were in a better shape than they'd ever been. So that was, between the ages of like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So we know that, so you were really active at that point. We know by people experience PSC symptoms and the journey with PSC very differently. Different people experience it differently. How did you get diagnosed? What symptoms did you have that made you go to the doctor? Or maybe you were symptom-free and you just got the diagnosis in a routine checkup?
Well, so I went to the Paralympics in Rio 2016, and I would say I don't think I had this one episode where I had really, really bad abdominal pain and sweating, and now it seems so obvious that was bile duct cholangitis, but we didn't do anything. I have a policy of never going to A&E, you know, so we were just, I was young, that was fine. That was the only time. And being a Paralympian, my bloods were checked every year. And it's funny now, looking back, I can see it. They said, oh, Hannah, you mustn't train on the days your bloods are checked, because, you know, you can change your blood test. And it was one of the liver, but all the liver results were really high. And they just thought I'd trained and I wasn't fit enough, which is interesting, right? But the reason I got diagnosed is, unfortunately, my symptom of cerebral palsy, which is spastic cerebral palsy, started to get a lot worse, which doesn't happen. It's a static disability. And I felt very fatigued. I was feeling every time I exercised, I'd have to lie down for hours. I mean, I had a partner at the time and I said, oh, it's allergies. I'm just super allergic to my cats. And he said, that's not allergies. And I was like, I was totally in denial. Honestly, it was kind of amazing to fathom what I put up with. I was really struggling. And then the pandemic hit and my sport stopped. And I said, oh, well, at least I can get treatment for my spasticity. So I went to a clinic. They did some bloods to check I could go on medication, and they sent me straight to the liver department. They were like, no, we're not putting you on new medication. Your liver results are... My GP didn't believe it though. She tested me every single week for a month, and they just stayed super high. And she said, oh, wow, okay. And then they just took a bit of my liver, really simple procedure, a liver biopsy, and straight away it was in the middle of the pandemic. So not even with anybody in my bedroom, the doctor was like, oh yeah, you have this thing as well as cerebral palsy. So yeah, it's a pretty big one. Yeah.
And so you got your diagnosis.
That's
You got your diagnosis, and you're obviously really active and really athletic, and you've got this lifestyle in sport now. How has PSC affected your day-to-day life?
So well, as soon as I got the diagnosis, we were like, oh, okay, this makes sense. This is how much fatigue you were experiencing. And also I was diagnosed at a point where they said you've got pretty severe. So, well, you never know, right? It's not a linear process, PSC, but they said, you know, you have to bear in mind that you may have a transplant. You know, it's not minimal what you've got. It's pretty severe sclerosis. And so that was actually really hard to deal with, especially as my fatigue would come and go, and it was totally unknown. With cerebral palsy, is totally known. It stays the same. Yes, you have trouble walking and doing daily activities, but PSC can hit you out the blue, and I find it so much harder. It's an invisible disability, and all the autoimmune girlies out there, like just being able to use my brain, it's my brain fog, basically. It started, it was before then, but basically because of the pandemic, I couldn't do sport. I had to then find a job and try to do a job, and being so sleepy. It is still to this day the hardest thing to deal with. And I have quite severe cerebral palsy, so like I use a wheelchair, and no, the ability to use my brain is the most valued thing, and always was, not my body. So it's hard. Never underestimate like how much fatigue is a player in an autoimmune disease. And I think it's amazing how we can treat itch, but we can't treat fatigue. Or, you know, there are drugs that do, and they did put me on one, and I do support it. It saved that first 6 months. It gave me back a little bit of my energy, modafinil, but it's not a prescribed drug generally. So it's, you know, it's not for everyone. And it stopped working after 6 months. So yeah, so it was pretty hard, and I've had to come to terms with it. I'm 3 years in now. And I guess now it's actually, I have turned it around, and it is quite positive. I have said, well, I'm going to do everything I want to do just in case I have to go through quite a serious operation, which is liver transplant. And just, it's a license to to do everything that I can possibly do in the time I have. Even if that is 15 years, oh no, I went to so many amazing places and had so many amazing experiences.
You're certainly the poster girl for that, aren't you? Experiencing as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, well, like my doctor told me something really powerful, and he said, you just can't control this, but what you can control is your fitness and your, and it's your fitness and your health and your nutrition, so that if you go through this operation, you're going to come out the best you can. And it's terrifying to hear that as somebody who can't move easily. I'm sure it's as terrifying as if you're an able-bodied person, especially a woman maybe with care, woman or man who has a lot of child-caring duties or work. Trying to live like an athlete is it's a full-time job. So I understand how annoying that can be to hear. But for me, I mean, I was like, right, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I think that he said if I could prescribe exercise, I would. And there's no cause and there's no cure to this disease. So, I mean, that's how I'm going to live, as long as I'm not, not completely comatose. That's what I'm avoiding, essentially, by doing what I can. And I found surfing, and I'm sure there's other ways for people to avoid the fatigue.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you actually about your coping mechanisms, when we're diagnosed, but I really think you've just talked about them, the exercise, the positivity, doing what you can. Is there anything else that you found? I know some people, want to fundraise, some people want to connect with others, some people want to do lots of different things. Anything else that you found was a good coping mechanism?
Well, first of all, thank you to PSC UK, because actually that was the biggest thing. I'm really lucky that one of my parents is a doctor, and it was very devastating for her to have this diagnosis for me, because she had a disabled kid already. The idea is that with cerebral palsy, you get enough surgery. By 18, you're out the hospital for life. So now I'm looking at it the other way, is that eventually I'll go back into hospital, hopefully only for a small amount of time. But it was more devastating to her. And I think PSC UK and the specialists, and being able to access, without you guys, we wouldn't be able to. I am in a specialist clinic in Birmingham because I have got a complex case. And so that has been a godsend, because she does support me. If I'm feeling terrible, if I'm like, is this it? Is this it? You have a lot of, oh no, am I jaundiced? Am I, should I be on the list? And I think it's taken a lot of pressure off my mum. And so I think support mechanisms, I mean, family, friends, but also PSC UK has been, shout out to Martine, because she was the one who said, and I think just having knowledgeable people, even if you're, I'm eloquent, I can use my voice, luckily, and so can my mum is part of the medical community, but it must be incredibly overwhelming if you don't have access to that. So I think for me, it has been focusing on sport. As I said, that's what I can control, and make sure that I'm in the best health. But essentially, you guys are a lifeline, I think. And I think I don't dismiss that it's very hard to deal with mentally, this disease, because I think the leading symptoms are actually depression before fatigue. So I'm very aware that I'm of that, and before itching, before liver failure, it's actually the mental side effects of not knowing. So I think you do an excellent job, and I honestly, I'm not kidding, not just because you're interviewing me, but it's really important to support charities like yourselves. So yeah.
Thank you very much. And I have to say, Martine is absolutely brilliant on our helpline. So
yeah. What
do you think is the most misunderstood thing about PSC?
Well, coming at it as a disabled person already, it's a very visibly, physically disabled person. You can't tell right now, but if I was to walk across the screen, you would. I'm sorry, there's a little background noise here. But I think the misunderstood thing is the sleepiness and the brain fog, that you can essentially lose your cognitive ability for extended periods of time, and that's very hidden. So, and you can, and there's no cure, and there's no understanding of that. And especially, that's the hardest thing to say, even to friends and family. I'm so sorry, I can't actually understand what you're saying, and I'm completely different to how I was right now. Of course, I'm completely lucid, but tomorrow I might not be, and it's terrifying and very misunderstood. And people just think, whatever, you know, especially maybe the laziness, or even I know people who've been diagnosed instead of with PSC, instead of with fatty liver and alcoholism. And I'm just very lucky that I'm young and sporty, that never happened to me. But I'm sure that has happened, and how devastating that is. I'm so lucky to actually have a very defined diagnosis for what's been going on, that, you know, that I've been sleepy, and that people have said, oh, that's because you're experiencing very high levels of toxicity. You know, we don't know exactly why, but, you know, not that you're lazy or you don't care or you can't tidy or whatever, you know.
Like you said,
So
it's the
that's
ability of the disease that's difficult for some people to get their heads around, isn't it?
yeah, and even and especially actually how long and chronic this can be, so that you have to say to people, yes, it could be a terrible diagnosis, maybe, but also that you can't start panicking now, because you'll have to have endurance. It might be 2 years, it might be 5, it might be 15. So I tell my loved ones, like, yeah, okay, we're not going to think about this negatively now. We will when we have to, and you just have to brush it off. Otherwise, there's no life. You won't live life. You'll just be terrified. So yeah.
You talked about, you know, you're in it. Just when you mentioned endurance there, I was thinking you're in an endurance sport arena, and you know, you've got this perspective on endurance for PSC as well. It's a really interesting way of looking at it.
I think I actually stopped being able to do my long road rides because I would be so tired and feel so sick. And I love sport, so I kept doing it and kept feeling, I called it an exercise hangover. Before I even knew I had PSC, I'd say, oh, I've got my exercise hangover now. And people would say, oh, you're probably not fit enough. Oh, it will go away. And it's not. And I think a lot of people, if you're experiencing that and you just exercise for fun, don't tell yourself it's nothing. It's something. You need to exercise really gently. I think, yeah, endurance. I mean, I'm going to go full force at anything, but I do a sport now that's totally assisted, so I don't do so much effort. I mean, it's still enough for me, but it's not. So I get other people to help me, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think needing assistance, asking for help, saying, if I do this, you know, if you look up chronic fatigue, there's all the mechanisms of coping, like the spoon theory of how many spoons you've got to spend in a day. We use that a lot, and especially even with my parents, I'm so sorry, I'm too tired to have you come visit, and I love you still, but they understand that it's not, you know, but it takes time and self-compassion, not necessarily endurance. A lot of people I know push through things, and you're taught as a Paralympian to push through the pain, and actually there's no pushing. If your liver and bile ducts are causing huge inflammation, if you push through and do a 4-hour road ride, that's not going to help. So yeah, or you can't, you know, you just have to just take the good days when they're there, and don't let yourself be too bogged down by the bad days, but also say they're bad days. Say, like, I'm having a bad day and I can be bad. It's okay, you know. Currently that's how I'm living. I don't know if it's the answer.
Well, it seems to be the answer. It seems to be the answer for you, right? And I think everybody's got a different way of coping and strategizing with the disease, but that seems to be a really good way of, you know, it's working for you. How do you find traveling with PSC? Does that?
Well, with my brain fog, it's actually really terrifying, because sometimes I don't know where I am or where I'm going to. But luckily, because of my physical disability, I actually get I'm in an electric wheelchair, so I don't expend any energy. I get a lot of assistance around the airport, and of course, it's interesting fatigue, because I can do nothing at all for days on end and still have PSC fatigue, and then I can do a competition or fly around the world and not have fatigue, you know. So it's not like a causal effect. You have tiredness, which is normal tiredness, and then you have PSC fatigue, which is something completely different. And so I think just, in fact, changing my environment and challenging myself is still something that does essentially distract maybe from symptoms, but I don't think it would make it worse. It's just the fact that health insurance is a nightmare. Just watch out if you've got quite progressed PSC. You have shout out of Auntie for still covering me.
There are other insurers that do cover. Must say that.
They don't give me a discount. I shouldn't have said the name. Bleep them out.
So Hannah Dines, thank you so much for your time today and openly sharing your experiences of your life with PSC. Before I let you get back to the beach and you're bored, do you have any specific messages or advice for others with PSC?
Especially young people with PSC. It's quite a scary thing to be diagnosed with. But I think, you know, can you still party? Can you still do those things? I say you must do those things. I say you actually should. I think it's a license to do more and to live harder, because there is that chance that you could have to really have a liver transplant, take medication for the rest of your life. So if you aren't in that place right now, then enjoy, like, escape from the hospital, okay? Don't let them take you. That's what I'm saying. That's my advice for you.
And looking ahead, what are your goals and aspirations? What's planned? What's the future look like for Times?
So I did stop planning more than 6 months in advance with fatigue. I had to cancel so many things. But since my clinical trial, where I did actually get respite from some of the symptoms, I've started planning for the future. And I'm a writer, and that depends entirely on if I can use my brain or not. But yeah, I'm focusing on the sport aspect, trying to just qualify for the world champs in this sport, this surfing sport I do, which is not, it's adapted surfing. So it's perfect for me, trying to just keep that going, writing a lot about the Paralympic Games, because it's Paralympic year. I'm not competing, but I hope to be doing some work for them. So that's exciting. And yeah, and I also, yeah, I hope to just keep on top of you know, my symptoms. Getting checked is really important to make sure I don't have any progression. And yeah, so that's what I hope for the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your experiences. And I hope you have how long are you in Costa Rica for? A long time, or?
Oh yeah, well, as long as I can. I've got a little note from my doctor. We're doing a little trial here, like, to see if it actually helps me. But I'm under strict instructions. If I go yellow or get swelling, I have to come right back. So fingers crossed. As long as I can, to try and get some good holistic healing out here and training. So yeah.
Well, Hannah Dines, thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bye.